Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Mr. Kevin Beckett. He is the head of oil and gas of Digicel Business Solution. His theme for today, fueling the future of the oil and gas industry. Mr. Beckett.
All protocols observed. Your Excellency, Ambassador, Mr. President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm going to run you through what to Digicel Business is an extremely exciting time. What we've been talking about for the last 2 years is now a reality. This, which I'm going to pass, I'm just going to pass this on. 20 years ago, that would have been this wide. That's the internet. We're installing that subsea infrastructure. We're installing that subsea infrastructure from Trinidad and Tobago through Guyana into Suriname and French Guyana. And it'll interact with our existing subsea infrastructure that goes up to Puerto Rico. This is an absolute game changer, specifically for Suriname, because what the oil and gas piece is really exciting. However, what's even more exciting is the fact that we can fibre enable this country. Every single house in time, we will be able to offer 500 meg internet to, IPTV, and all of the services that in the Western world we just take for granted. This is coming. March 24 is when we will be installed. I go to Calais in 2 weeks' time to load the cable onto the ship, and we do testing, and then it'll come to Trinidad where it'll start the implementation in November. And we'll be done and finished in French Guyana by March I think it's March the 10th. So we'll be able to offer services in those 3 countries, and Trinidad will get extra bandwidth capacity because what we're seeing at the moment is the internet off island is maxed out because there's no subsea capacity available at the moment. So for us, this is hugely exciting. It's an enabler for the country, but then equally for the oil and gas fields, we can traverse across to, and we can offer services up to 12 terabits for an FPSO, which is a game changer because that means then they can do all of the magnificent IoT services, and we can get real efficiency from a processing perspective. I'm going to go back to my first slide now, but I just thought that was important. So if you imagine what we're putting in is the motorway. So Deep Blue 1 is the foundation of what we're doing. We've already got a extensive subsea infrastructure throughout the Caribbean. So this is just an extension for us. And then we build our services as most service providers that you'd be aware of throughout the world do exactly the same. So we can offer connectivity, whether that's dedicated internet for businesses or subsea infrastructure in terms of we can do offshore services, but it's still connectivity. We can do local area network, so if people need manage Wi-Fi or they need security switching, etc., we can do that. I don't want to get into too techie here, but it's important to understand the good and the bad of this stuff, because this line here is the stuff that should be keeping us all awake at night. Cybersecurity is a real danger for our industry, and it's a real danger for your industry, and we need to take it seriously, and we need to invest in it. If we don't, there's so much harm out there that can be done, and we have to make sure that we are an ethical and a secure service provider, and we need to be working with global technology partners to make sure that we're offering those right levels of security. We can then work on top of that stack to take businesses to their cloud offerings. So we partner with Equinix, they're throughout the US, Miami, New York is where we interact. They also go into Sao Paulo, down this part of the world. But equally so then, they've got infrastructure throughout Europe. So what we try to do is partner with best of breed global service providers to give that true world-class experience end to end. On top of that, we've then got our IoT and our wearable solutions. So we've got some very, very funky push-to-talk solutions. We're working with some Canadian companies on the robotic dogs, which I'm sure you've seen some of the operators utilising elsewhere around the world. So we're trying to bring that to the region. And we're also working with a company called Tapnet, who are in Gulf of Mexico, in Canada, North Sea, with a lot of the operators who are working in this part of the world, to offer offshore LTE and to offer private mobile APN networks as well as high-speed internet. So Deep Blue One, it's part of, there's probably, I would say within the next 5 years, there's going to be 3 phases of Deep Blue. So Deep Blue One is what we've talked about already. We're then looking at a potential link into Barbados, dependent on their auctions at the moment, into Trinidad and Tobago, and then also looking at linking up some of the other fields on the other side of Tobago, Trinidad potentially, dependent on further production there, which will then, it gives the entire region the ability to interconnect with each other. I think from a Suriname perspective, you'll have seen on the map here, this dotted line is so important for Suriname, because what that gives us the ability to do is to route our way out of trouble if we've got issues. So if we get service outages, if we weren't to have this link, which is already installed by the way, Suriname would be standalone. So if we lost this link, for example, out to the internet, we couldn't route our way out of trouble. So we put this in at an extensive cost to ourselves, and then we're potentially looking at these branching units subsea. We're potentially looking at putting a link in between those two as well. What that gives us is if any part of the network goes down, it'll self-heal and we can reroute, which will mean that service won't be impacted for the end user. As I said before, that's 12 terabits of capability we can give off a single fibre strand, which is more than enough in terms of bandwidth, both for the large enterprises. But then equally when we're on land as well, we'll be offering 500 meg, as I've said, to terrestrial businesses, but then that gives us the ability to offer multi-gigabit to places such as here. So the internet service offering itself will be so much more improved, and we can offer a higher service-based outcome, so higher KPIs and service level agreements, which is what businesses would like to have, because then they've got certainty in terms of financially, but then from how they can run their businesses from a more stable perspective. So that cable I've just passed around there that's the heaviest of the 3 cables that we're installing. So that's the double armoured. That goes into where there's potential to be pulled up in terms of trawlers, etc. And then as we get further out into the deeper water, we can use a lighter gauge cable, and then we melt all that in together using technology. So it's 2,153 kilometres. We've got 700 branching units. As I said, we're loading it into Calais, and believe it or not, we've got to test every 15 kilometres as it gets reeled on, which is a really boring process, but we need to make sure that cable is going to work as soon as it goes in. We've got between 2 and 8 fibre pairs. As I said, we're landing into Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, French Guyana, And that'll give us real belt and braces in terms of our network capability and working with international businesses then for them to be able to utilise countries such as here as a hub and not have to worry about failure in terms of the network. On top of that, as I said before with the first slide, at the heart of all of that, you lay the motorway, and then we need to offer proper managed services for you guys that you can rely on, that the American companies can get with their eyes closed from a Verizon or an AT&T or a Sprint. We need to be able to do that in the region as well. So we already do such services, you'll be pleased to know, across our 26 territories. The majority of the Digicel senior level are all ex-tier ones from different parts of the world. Myself, I'm ex-BT, ex-Verizon and Vodafone. So what we're doing is putting our best practice into reality for these markets, and that excitement and those outcome-based solutions are what's going to drive this brilliant opportunity for everybody in Suriname itself. So the managed services are at the heart of everything we do. We've got some cyber security practice ourselves, so we can do threat management and pen testing from a cyber perspective. We also offer our own communication system for on the platforms, and equally so for mining, for example. We've already deployed in a couple of companies within Suriname itself. We'll do managed endpoints, so from a firewalling perspective, etc. And then from a solution-defined networking perspective, all the stuff that you'd expect to get from a proper telco, we're offering that across all the region. That's all I've got to offer. From my perspective, this is so exciting. The business side is brilliant. What I can't wait for is when we can traverse this into the schools. The education piece, and we can educate these kids, whether we have to go through another pandemic again, and we can offer them 500 meg internet at home, and they can learn properly. That's the icing on the cake here, and it's so exciting. It's coming soon. Thank you.